And I would like to begin with a land acknowledgement. So today our presenters are from a number of different places across this country, across Canada. I am speaking to you today from Toronto, which is the traditional territory of the Huron, Wendat, Petun, and Seneca First Nations, the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. And wherever we are, I would invite you to be mindful of the traditional territory where you find yourself. I would also like to quickly just mention a few guidelines for the webinar today. We have a big group, which is wonderful. There should be some time for questions at the end, which you can ask in the chat or the Q&A as you wish. If needed, you can raise your hand either on the phone or in the Zoom interface if you're using a computer or a mobile device. And we can unmute you then so that you can speak your question if that is more comfortable for you than typing it. So this webinar is being recorded and will be available once we've prepared captions and transcript. And with that, I will turn this over to Charmaine and Awana, who will present to you the Envoy Connect audio device.
Okay, thank you for coming out today, everyone. We're really excited to share with you our new audiobook player. And we'll begin with me giving you a little bit of an overview of what we're going to be covering, and then we'll get into the actual content. So to begin with, I'll give you just a little bit of background, like just a few minutes of background to explain the reasoning behind the launch of this player. And then after that, we'll go into some benefits of why the Envoy Connect is a good tool. And then after that, we'll talk about the basics of the Envoy Connect player for anyone who doesn't have one or is thinking about getting one but wants to know more details about it. Then we'll go into Iwana will give us a demonstration of the player. You'll get to hear and see what it sounds like, what it looks like, and how you can play books on it. After that, I will give an overview of our software that we use called the CELA Connect software. It's a software that's used to manage books on the player. So I'll show you how all of that works, and I'll give a demonstration of that as well. And then after that, I'll pass it back to Iwana, and she'll go over where you can get more information about the player and where it can be purchased if you're interested to use one. And then at the end of that, we will close the presentation and we'll have time to take your questions about the player. So now we will get started with some background. I'm just trying to advance my slide. So at CELA here, we're always doing our best to expand, to keep up with technology, because technology is always changing, right? So one day we think that we know all the technologies that are out there, and then the next day something happens, an app changes, and we have to learn everything all over again. So to keep up with this idea, we launched the Envoy Connect. We launched it in May of 2022, and it's become a great player for all that it can do. And I think I'm just having some issues advancing my slides, so it may take me a minute. So here are some facts that we are going to lay out for you now that will explain why the Envoy Connect is a great tool for listening to audiobooks. The first is that it's very simple to use. In fact, it only has 6 buttons, and it's very portable. It's very low tech, so if you don't know a whole lot of technical knowledge or you're not really that tech savvy, this is actually the perfect player because it's very simple and yet it does a lot for what it's worth. And it also has this software that's accompanied with it called the CELA Connect software, which we'll talk more about later. It is a software that will let you easily add and delete books from the Envoy Connect. And I'll show you how all that works. So basically, that player is has a lot of benefits. We launched the player at the beginning of, or we launched the player in May 2023, and the Envoy Connect became available for purchase at CNIB Smart Life, which is where you can purchase it now. The price is $97. And we also have this resource page that Iwan is going to share with you at the end of the presentation. That's where all of our user guides and our tutorials and our videos and our learning resources live. That's the page where you would go. It's kind of like your one-stop shop for learning how to use the Envoy Connect. We have them in different formats, and that's where you would go. That's where also the CELA Connect software lives, and it's available for free download from there as well. Okay. So now let's get into the basics of the Envoy Connect for those that don't know. We'll start with what is the Envoy Connect player. So in very simple terms, it is a simple handheld audiobook player. It's pretty much about the size of a small remote control, but you can think of it as the kind of player that's small enough to fit in the palm of one hand. In fact, you can hold it. What I like to do when I use it to listen to audiobooks is hold it in one of my hands and control it in that way. So you can control it just using one hand because it's very small. Audiobooks can be loaded onto it using our CELA Connect software. That's integrated with the direct-to-player service that we have, which most of you are probably familiar with. And the idea is that it works kind of like the MP3 players that were available before streaming services became the new way for listening to music. Many of you may be familiar with those players. It's the kind of player that you plug into your computer. You load all the books or files onto it that you want to use the player to play. And then you disconnect the player, and then all of the data that you've loaded can be accessed from the player. So that actually leads into our next point on the slide, which is that it requires a computer for reloading because it doesn't have any Wi-Fi or Bluetooth capability. So let's go over some pros and cons of the player now. This is actually useful information to know if anyone is thinking about using the player, but just wants to make comparisons, as we all like to do. So here are some pros that we'll start with first. The first is that the player is compact and lightweight. It's very simple to use, and it's very low tech. So it's also low cost compared to many of the audiobook players that are available out there on the market today. It's got a keypad that can be easily distinguished by sight and by touch. So if you're blind or if you have low vision, the player is very universally accessible in that way. What I actually like to think of as a positive thing about it too is that it's a touch screen. It doesn't have a touch screen interface, unlike many of the devices that are out there. So it's for people who prefer to actually feel where the buttons are and navigate the player in that way. It also has audible and visual indicators that will tell you what it's doing at all times. So it doesn't speak, the player doesn't speak aloud anything to you, but it will have beeps and chimes that are very distinct and that way you can learn to listen to what the player is doing. It has both a headphone jack and an onboard speaker for listening, so you can listen to the players. You can listen to the audiobooks in private, or you can listen to it out loud on its onboard speaker. The cons of the player now is that it only has basic audio navigation. So it doesn't have any way for you to control the speed of the playback or the tone or the pitch of the narrator that's playing the audiobook. And you can't set bookmarks. You can't actually do anything that's sort of advanced, like knowing how much time you have left in the book and all those other things that come with the more advanced Daisy players. The buttons on the player for some people with motor dexterity issues might be too small for such people to use. The other con for some people is that the player doesn't have any voice guidance or spoken feedback. So it doesn't really talk to you at all. It doesn't have any, it won't talk you through any of the functions. Like I said earlier, it just has some beeps and chimes that you'll have to learn to listen to figure out what the player is doing. The next con is that it needs a computer to load books. So it's not Wi-Fi enabled. If you want to load anything onto it, you'll need to connect it to a computer that has an internet connection. The audio quality that is coming through the player is only average audio quality through its built-in speaker. The speaker is small. I believe that it has very good sound, surprisingly good sound for its small size, but again, it says here that it only has average audio quality. And the last con is that it can't be used to search for books directly from the CELA collection. So it's not like the Easy Reader app, for instance, where you can search our collection directly. It doesn't allow you to do that on this player. All of that needs to still happen by logging into our website. Okay, so the next piece is, how do I put books on the player? Well, we have 3 different options that you can choose from depending on your comfort level or depending on what you feel like doing. The first option for getting books onto your player is to use our CELA Connect software. It's our beautiful software that we have that works with all of the screen readers, JAWS and NVDA and Windows Narrator. And we'll come to that later on. The second option that you have, if you have nobody to help you with the software, or if you are not comfortable loading using the computer software, is you can mail the player back to us at CELA through the Canada Post agreement that we have. It's done via Free Matter for the Blind. So it's basically when you purchase the player, there's an envelope that's pre-addressed that comes with it. And it's got this literature for the blind program written on the envelope, and then you would just pop the player in there and mail it back to us for reloading. The third option is to do a combination of both options 1 and 2. So whatever you feel is most comfortable, you can load the player using the software for a while, and then if you like, if you feel inclined, you can mail the player back to us for some reloading. So those are basically the options that we have for reloading the player. I'm now going to pass it to Iwana, who's going to demonstrate actually what the player looks and sounds like, so you'll be able to get a closer look at it.
Hello, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here. So without further ado, let's introduce the new star of our lineup of supported players. I've turned on the video. I hope everything is working well. So I'm starting with the top face of the player. At the top, we have a round speaker grill. And underneath it, we have the 6 buttons that Charmaine already alluded to. They're arranged in 2 horizontal rows. And I will briefly explain each of them. I will just go over them quickly and then over the functions of the player in action in more detail afterwards. So the first button, the top left, is the volume button. So it actually is a longer button that has an upper portion to raise the volume, a lower portion to lower it. And they're all marked with recognizable symbols. Like I can clearly feel the minus sign on the dash on the lower part of the volume button, and on the top is a kind of a plus sign. Then next to it, top middle, we have the bookshelf button, which allows us to cycle through the available books that are currently loaded on the player. And it has 4 dots that distinguish it. To the right of it, we have the sleep timer, which you can imagine is a very handy tool. So you can turn off the player after a preset number of minutes. Moving on to the lower row of buttons, we have the back button, which is shaped like an arrow pointing to the left. Then we have the power and play button, which is the biggest button, and it's very suggestive that this is your go-to main button. It's the largest button, and it has a nice concave shape that fits your finger. And to the right of this button, we have the forward button, which is shaped like an arrow pointing forwards. So these are the buttons. I'll quickly show you the bottom side of the player. First, at the bottom edge, we have on the top, on the left corner of the bottom edge, we have a headphone jack that you can plug in. It comes with the headphones that the player comes with, a pair of headphones, but we can use any headphones that have a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. Next to it, we have a micro USB port that we will connect a cable. You also have a supplied cable that comes with the player. This is the player that you can use to connect the player to the computer so that you can manage the content, and it is also used to charge the player. To the right of that, so on the right corner of the bottom.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you move it slightly to the right, or sorry, to the left? There we go. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so to the right side, the right corner of the bottom edge is an SD card slot. So you can put a micro SD card in this player. So the player has 8 gigabytes of RAM, but you can extend it if you want to have more books at a time. You can. It doesn't come with a supply. You would have to purchase it yourself, but you can expand the capacity of the player. On to the bottom, to the back side of the player, one of the very interesting features is a solar panel at the top. It's a rectangular solar panel that, as the name suggests, you can use to charge the player. Let's say if you're out camping and you have no access to power, no need to be left hanging in your favorite book. You can keep using the player. It charges quite well. It's just a little slower, but in a pinch, it's a very nice feature to have. Underneath the solar panel, we have a printed label with a serial number, which is an important piece of information that you need to have. You can also access this, by the way, you can make the player tell you the serial number, but so don't fear not if you cannot see the printed label. And we have a reset button, which we hope you won't have to use, but if ever the player needs to be, it's like a little pinhole that you can press with a sharp object and the player will reset without losing any data. We also have a lanyard at the very top of the back side of the player, which a lanyard hole that you can attach a lanyard so you can carry the player, so it makes it more versatile. Okay, so that's a short physical description. On to a practical demonstration. So I will press and hold down the power and play button, which, as we said before, is on the bottom row in the middle. I'll hold it down and we should hear a chime.
Lewis by Forrest Gander, DB 96941. Copyright 2018 by Forrest Gander.
Okay, so whenever you start the player, I hope it is loud enough. I will actually first demonstration, I will press the volume up button. Oh, it's at the maximum. Okay, so we heard 2 beeps, which tell us that we have reached the maximum level of the player. When you start the player, you hear the beginning few 20 seconds or so of the last book you were reading. So if I wanted to go and choose the bookshelf, and I can see which books are available and see which one I want to continue, I will go right above the power and play button on the top row. In the middle is the bookshelf, and I'm pressing it, and I will hear a list of books. Every time I press the button, we'll hear a next book.
Envoy Connect Quick Start Guide.
This is
Last
the
updated.
user guide
Musique par Stéphanie Tremblay.
that's a French book.
Monument. Poems new and selected.
Be With by Forrest Gander.
Okay.
DB
Unfortunately, there is no good
96941.
way to stop the
Copyright
player
2018
while it's
by
giving me
Forrest
this
Gander.
beginning information. I'm just, okay. So we have cycled. I had the user guide that comes preloaded on all players and a few other books. And once you've reached the end of the list, it will go right back to the top. So it cycles through the books. And we've reached again the book that we had started with. I will now demonstrate the player function. So I start playback by briefly pressing the power and play button.
Be With by Forrest Gander.
So I can press
DB
quickly the,
96941.
I'll press it again to pause.
Copyright
So the play is also a play pause button. So it's the button that does a lot of things. It plays, it pauses, it turns the player on and off. Now the forward button, if I press it quickly, it will jump to the next section. I will demonstrate.
6941. Library of Congress annotate from the book jacket. About the author. Other books by Forrest Gander.
I'm pressing the pause button.
As a friend.
So as you can see,
Or samples from the world.
okay. So every time I pressed, I jumped to a new section. As mentioned before, you cannot see the different levels of sections. You will just, so you don't have level 1 section, level 2. They're all at the same, they will present it on the same level. You're just jumping kind of like on an MP3 player, like Charmaine was saying, from one section to another. Now we can do the same thing. I will play again and go
As a
backwards.
friend. Course about the author. Forrest from the book jacket. Library of Congress annotation.
So as you can see, I'm now pressing quickly the back button, which is to the left of the power and play button. We can also, if you want to get somewhere within a section, if I will demonstrate, I will start playback and I will press and hold the forward button, and you will hear a series of beeps. Every time you hear a beep, that means you have just jumped 30 seconds. So I
Library
will
of Congress
keep
annotation.
it pressed.
From the book jacket.
Okay, so I just jumped a
Be
minute.
With.
Oh, okay. So because that chapter was quite short, it couldn't go further, so it just continued playing the next section.
From
I
the
will
book jacket.
demonstrate.
Be
So
like
I've
a
just
hymn,
jumped
transforming slowly
120
from reverence
seconds.
to revelation.
And you could do the same thing with the back button, jumping backwards. So this is a quick overview. There are some other nice features. It's possible to delete books from the player without having to go to your computer. There is a way, let's say if you're done reading a player, to just press a few keys down and the player will delete the book this way. But as I said, you have a preloaded user guide on the player, and we'll talk later about all the material that you can find out, all the more advanced features, such as the sleep timer, and all of them have, as we said, nice audio signals to help you. You can even check the battery level. Just to demonstrate, I'm going to hold down the back button while the player is paused, and we will hear a series of beeps. So 3 beeps, that means that my player the charge is high. 2 beeps would have been medium, 1 beep would have been low. So just to show you, the player doesn't speak to you, but it beeps and you will learn to understand its language. So this is a quick demonstration. I'll pass it back to Charmaine, who will show you, talk to you about the CELA Connect software that we have developed.
Okay, so now that you've had a closer look at the player itself, we'll talk about book management. So the idea is how to manage books onto the player. First of all, we'll go over what CELA Connect is. It's a free, accessible computer software that you use for managing books on the player. Like I said, it's workable with all of the Windows screen readers that are available. So whether you use JAWS, NVDA, or Windows Narrator, it will work correctly. It's free to download, and we'll show you where to get that at the end of the presentation. It requires internet access in order to work, and it can't be used on Mac computers. So this is an important point to keep in mind. It only works on computers that are running Windows 10 or later. But if you have a Mac and you want to use the player with it, it's possible to do that. We won't cover this in our presentation today for the sake of time, but it has, we have an advanced manual loading mode section in our user guide that will teach you how to put books onto the player using a MacBook. Anyway, that's sort of the CELA Connect software by definition. Now we're going to go over sort of the steps of how this software works in theory first, and then I'll demonstrate it. So in theory, the software works in the following way. First, you would download and install it just like you would install any other program. The installation is pretty quick. Once you install the software, it will launch itself. And when you do that, you'll be prompted to plug your Envoy Connect into the computer. And then if your player's registered with the library, like mine is, that means if you've given the contact center your serial number and they've added your player onto your account, then the software will detect it and it will automatically log you in without you having to do anything. No entering of passwords or anything. And then you'll be prompted to start choosing first the books that you want to delete off of the player, if any. And then you'll be prompted to choose any books that you want to download that you've borrowed and put onto your virtual bookshelf. After you choose what books you want to load onto the player, you'll be asked to confirm your selection. And then the software will tell you when it's completed what's called the content update process, which is just this whole process of getting books off of the player if you want and putting books on. So now that is sort of in theory how it works. I'm now going to close my PowerPoint, and then we're going to actually hear what this sounds like in action. I'm going to actually share my screen to start with. And I'll also let you hear, for today, you'll be hearing me use NVDA. The short version is that my JAWS license is having issues, or something about it is not allowing JAWS to talk to me. It hasn't been talking to me for pretty much the entire day today. So until I get that sorted out, I'm going to be living off of NVDA, which is fine because all the commands that I'll be introducing today to you is basically the same commands. They're identical for both JAWS and NVDA. So it actually doesn't matter which one you use. It'll be exactly the same. So I'm going to share my screen now. And I'll also share my sound.
Speech mode beeps. Speech mode talk. Live transcription. Speech mode off. Speech mode beeps. Speech mode talk. Screen sharing meet. CELA Connect. CELA Connect.
Okay. So
Opal Hamel Plus.
For the sake of example,
Participants can now.
I've actually slowed down my NVDA speech, so hopefully it's slow enough for everyone. If it's not, feel free to say something in the chat and I will slow down the speech till what we need it to be. So right now I have up here on my screen the beginning of what I have up here, the screen that you would see once you've installed the CELA Connect software and it's launched. So when it launches, this is what you'll see. It's a screen that says,
Plug your Envoy Connect Player into the computer.
it says plug your Envoy Connect Player into the computer. And that basically means that it's telling you whether it's detected a player or not. In my case, my player isn't connected yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my player that I have. I'm going to take the USB cable that comes with it. I'm going to plug the smaller end of the cable into the middle port of my player. And then I'm going to take the other end and I'm going to plug it in to an available USB port on my computer. And this screen is actually going to change. So I've just plugged it in now.
CELA
Heard
Connect.
the chime.
Continue button.
And now the screen
Windows
has changed. And actually, what's happening is
Continue button.
to navigate through the software and to read what it's saying, if we're using screen readers, we are basically using a combination of Shift Tab and Tab to get to the buttons. And then we will be using our arrow keys to read the messages that it's giving us. So I'm going to press Tab to read what it's telling me now.
Cancel message edit read only multi-line and Envoy Connect Player has been plugged in. You will now be connected to the library service.
Okay, so now it's saying an Envoy Connect Player has been plugged in. You'll now be connected to the library service. From here, I will tab to the Continue button. There are shortcuts that the software will tell you once you get really familiar with this software and how it works. At the beginning, you'll want to do what I'm doing, which is tabbing over to the buttons and pressing enter. You'll get a very good idea of what the software is doing if you learn it like that. But eventually, you'll get to know the shortcut keys that it will tell you. So
Continue button.
this is the Continue button. I'm going to press enter on it. I just tabbed over to it.
CELA Connect, Envoy Connect manual mode. Connect to library button.
Now we're on to the next
Username, player.
screen, and you can see now there's my username. There is my player serial number, and it's if you tab through all the fields, you'll know that it is saying, please wait, checking your bookshelf. That means it's detected my player, it's automatically logging in, and it's grabbing all the books that are not on my virtual bookshelf yet. It's grabbing all the
CELA Connect.
books that it detects that are currently on my player. So this is the first step of the process. It's now logged in, and now my screen has changed again. And it's basically saying,
This is the list of titles on your Envoy Connect Player. Select one or more titles from the list to remove them from the player as well as from your direct-to-player bookshelf. Remove them from the player. This is the list
so
of
it says that this is the list of titles on your Envoy Connect Player. Select one or more titles from the list to remove them from the player as well as from your direct-to-player bookshelf. So let's just break that statement down a little bit into two parts. First, it's saying that these are the books that I've found that are currently on your player. If you can remove one or more titles from the list, and any titles that you remove from here is going to be removed from the player as well as from the direct-to-player bookshelf on the CELA website. So when you log in to your library account and you go to your direct-to-player bookshelf, these books that you remove will no longer be there, listed there. So they'll be removed from both places. So if I tab over to my list of books.
List. Looking at the Moon, Daisy 2.02.
I'm now in a list. I just pressed tab and I'm now in a list of books. And if I just use my up or down arrow keys, just like I would if I were in any other list, in any other program, it would start to read aloud to me the book title and the format of the book. So let's just press my arrow key now.
Anansi, Looking at the Moon, Daisy 2.02, checkbox not checked 1 of 5.
So I can already tell it says the book title is Looking at the Moon. It's in DAISY format, which is basically the format that you would use, DAISY Direct Player, when you want to use this style, this option of listening to audiobooks. And it says it's 1 of 5. So if we press a down arrow, it will move to the next book that I have that's on my player.
A Nancy Drew Christmas, Nancy Drew Diaries, Daisy 2.02, checkbox not checked 2 of 5.
And then if we press down arrow again, it would read the third book.
Amelia Bedelia, Bookworm, Amelia Bedelia, Daisy 2.02, checkbox not checked 3 of 5.
And so on, right? So you arrow down with your up or down arrow keys and you'll get a list of all those books that are on your player that you can remove. From here, these books are all accompanied by little check boxes. You might have heard it read the book title in the format and then it said checkbox unchecked. So now what you would do if you wanted to select, you can select as many or as few books as you like. If you want to select a book to remove from your player, you would use your up or down arrow keys until you found the book. Like let's say, for example, I want to delete Amelia Bedelia, so I'm going to use my arrow keys till I hear the book title.
Amelia Bedelia, Bookworm, Amelia.
So that's the book title, and I'm going to select it by pressing spacebar.
Space, checked.
And you heard NVDA say checked, so that means it's been selected. You can do that for all the books if you wanted to, but we're just going to select one. And now we're going to tab just to see the other buttons.
Select all button Alt plus S.
So this is the select all button. It also gave you the shortcut key Alt S. You can use that once you become very familiar with the software. And then you press tab.
Deselect all button Alt plus D.
There's also a deselect all button. Let's say you've changed your mind, you don't want to select anything to remove, or you can tab to the next button, which is what we're going to do.
Next button Alt plus N.
Okay, so again, you just keep on tabbing, or you can use the shortcut keystrokes later on. So now we're going to press enter.
CELA Connect.
Now the screen has changed again, and we are on the next step. This is saying,
This is the list of titles on your direct-to-player bookshelf that you can download. Select one or more titles from the list to download. Note, if this list is empty, your new titles are being prepared in the background. This may take up to 24 hours. Continue to the next step and check the list again later.
so basically that message means that these are now the list of titles that it found on my direct-to-player bookshelf. This is basically any new content that I haven't loaded onto my player yet that's available to be put onto the player. That is the simplest way that I think to think about it. So if any books that you newly added to your direct-to-player bookshelf that you borrowed, that you want to load onto the player, it's going to be found in here, this screen. So now we're going to tab over. The screen looks just like the screen that we saw in the last step. We tab over to our list of books that are available to be downloaded onto the player.
List. Little Red Riding Hood, and
again, just like we did in the last step, you can use your arrow keys to hear what books are on my bookshelf currently that I can download. I have quite a few books, so we're not going to cycle through those, but let's select one to download. You do this in the same way that we did last time, which is hear the book title by pressing your up or down arrow keys until the title's spoken.
Little Red Riding Hood, ANSI/NISOZ 39.86 to 2005, checkbox not checked 1 of 11.
So there's a title that will download for us really quick. It's called Little Red Riding Hood. To select it, I'm going to press the space bar to check the little checkbox.
Space, checked.
Now that book is selected, I'm going to tab over to the next button.
Next button Alt plus N.
Press enter.
Next. Test text box. You are about to remove one title and download one new title to your player. Downloading may take some time depending on how many titles you have selected. Do not disconnect the player or exit the program until CELA Connect confirms the content update has completed. Multi-line.
Okay, so basically this is a confirmation, right? We all know that with any software, with most softwares, you'll get to confirm anything, any decision that you make before you actually elicit the action that you said that you wanted to do. So now it's asking you to confirm whether you're happy with your decision. It says you're about to remove one title, which is what we did, and download one new title to your player. Downloading may take some time, it's saying, depending on how many titles you have and you know how big the file sizes are. The important part is that it's telling you not to disconnect the player while all the action is happening or exit the program until CELA Connect confirms that it's safe to do, that it's the content update has completed. So that's actually the main piece to get from here. So if you're happy with your selections, you can press the next button.
Next button Alt plus N.
If you want to go back, you can press
Back button Alt plus B.
the back button, but I'm going to press the next button.
Next button Alt plus N.
I'm going to press enter. And what will happen after I press enter is it will start to remove the book that we selected, Amelia Bedelia, and then download the Little Red Riding Hood book that we selected to put onto the player. The key is to let the system do its thing. You can do other things on your computer, but be mindful of not closing this program or disconnecting the player so that unforeseen things don't happen. And after I press enter, it'll also update you within percentages of how long, how much of the book has been removed or downloaded, and you can basically tab over and read that information. So I'm going to press the next button now. I'm going to press enter on it.
Player edit read only selected 111-005187.
And now these are just fields that you can tab to.
Status edit read only selected downloading CELA Connect status.
Yeah, so it downloaded pretty quick. We didn't actually get to hear all of what it was saying, but it was telling us downloading Little Red Riding Hood. And before that, it was telling us removing Amelia Bedelia and how many percentage. So if you're downloading a really long book, you will get to monitor that progress very accurately by pressing tab to that area of the screen. So this is where you want to be, at this screen where it says
Message edit read only multi-line your content has been updated. You can now unplug the player.
It says now your content has been updated. You can now unplug the player. And this is our cue to tab over to the OK button.
OK button.
Press enter.
CELA Connect.
And then the software is not quite closed yet. It brings us back to the very beginning of where this process started. And then we tab to the exit button.
Edit read connect exit button.
And we press enter.
Basic training.
And now, get rid of that. That's the end of the CELA Connect demonstration. I recommend that once you've put anything on, I'm not going to show it, but you go into your File Explorer and you safely eject the player from your computer in the same way that you would eject any flash drive or anything else. So I'm going to stop my screen share.
Screen share mute.
Charmaine Co has stopped screen sharing.
Now I've stopped my screen share. I'm going to pass it to Iwana to close the presentation and go over where you can learn more about the player and also where you can purchase.
Mute my audio.
Yes, so thanks, Charmaine. This could be all a bit overwhelming, and there is more to the player and more to the software, but fear not. We have a one-stop page where you can have all sorts of tutorials. You have video tutorials going through the software. You have audio tutorials using JAWS, how to use the CELA Connect software. You have, in various formats, the user guide. You could even order the user guide and read it on a player that you're more familiar with. And that magic page to remember, it's www.celalibrary.ca/help/envoy-connect. Dash is the dash next to the zero, like the minus button. There is also a link that is being shown on the screen now where you can find out more about where to purchase this player, which is the CNIB
Message
Smart
received from
Life.
referring to everyone known
However,
https://
this is
CNIB
probably too complicated a link to explain, but basically go to cnibsmartlife.ca and there you will have a product search and you can type the name, the Envoy Connect, and you should find it this way. As we mentioned, it is quite affordable. It is $97, I think. Yeah. And so, yeah, this is, I think this kind of concludes all we wanted to share with you. And we hope that you've enjoyed the presentation and looking forward if you have any questions to any of us.